Hello and welcome to Down the Vent. My name's Joe, and today we're taking a look at my top 5 games that are like Ticket to Ride. Let's check them out. Alright, so first up on my list, at number 5, is New York 1901. Let's start with the differences. So the main differences between New York 1901 and Ticket to Ride is the theme. You're going to notice it right off the bat, right? You're building skyscrapers in the early 1900s in New York, versus placing trains to build routes across America or Germany or wherever you choose to play the game. The other differences is that New York 1901 is like a tad bit more difficult. You have a few more options on your turns. After you've placed buildings, you have the opportunity to destroy them and upgrade them, which the base version of Ticket to Ride doesn't really give you, so it's just like a little bit more. And then it also has a bit of a puzzle aspect to it, because after you've acquired the spaces on the area, like with your workers, you're taking them off and you're trying to fit the buildings in to your advantage, to benefit you the most. So you don't want to just throw the building down and then 2 rounds later be like, don't think I should have put that building there. You're going to want to kind of look at what you have in front of you, make a little bit of a plan, and try to figure out, which you do in Ticket to Ride. It's a similarity, right? You try to plan out your route, like, if I go here and then go to there, I can complete 2 routes at the same time without having to go everywhere. So that's where the similarities start to kick in. The next part is that the future market in New York 1901 is very similar to the trains, the train cards. So it's laid out, you can see what's available. You'll pick one on your turn, and that allows you to acquire space, and then you just move on. So that's the other part that it has in common. The main thing that I noticed is that you have limited options on your turn. You can either pick up a card and place one of your workers out to hold an area. You can replace your worker with a building, or you can demolish buildings and later on, once you have a bunch of buildings out, and upgrade them for more advanced buildings. So from copper to silver to gold. Other than that, there's the end game kind of triggers the same way. So when you get low on pieces, the New York 1901 that triggers the end game, similar to Ticket to Ride, where if you get low on trains, that triggers the end game. So New York 1901, that's my first pick, number 5 for games that are similar to Ticket to Ride. Okay, my number 4 game is Trekking the National Parks. So let's start with the differences again. Obviously, the theme. It's kind of similar because you're going across the United States, but you're trying to visit the national park. So the United States is there, if you're playing, the United States version of Ticket to Ride. But other than that, there's no trains. So if you're in it for the trains, this isn't going to do it for you. The other difference is that you get more than one action per turn. So it's not simply take cards or play cards or take new routes. You can choose between all of your actions and take 2 of them per turn. So a little bit of differences there. Okay, so on to the similarities. So there are the park cards, and the park cards say if you have these colored cards in your hand, then you can play them. So you're collecting sets and then playing them to gain points and to put them down. They're kind of like the routes in Ticket to Ride, except they're not negative at the end of the game or anything like that. But there are the postcard cards, which are also using set collection, and they do give you negatives if they're in your hands at the end of the game. So you got to really watch out for the postcard cards. You can't get, just like with the routes, you can't get overzealous and be like, I'm going to do all the postcards or do all the routes, because you are going to be feeling the pain of negative points at the end of the game. The other thing it has in common, like I said already, was the hand management set collection. The player cards that you get in your hand are very similar to the train cards. And then you can also block people by sitting on a space. They can't go there if you're sitting there, so they got to take their time to go around you. My number 4 game, Trekking the National Parks. Okay, my number 3 game is Bob Ross, The Art of Chill. So again, let's start with the differences. The theme, not there, no trains. All right, it's hard to find a train game that is similar to Ticket to Ride. I'll just say that, in mechanics at least. So you're painting with Bob Ross, so that's the next difference. You're playing against Bob Ross, because if he finishes the painting, or if anyone finishes the painting, then you can't do anything else on that painting. Which is kind of like the similarity, where we lean into the similarities, because in Ticket to Ride, if someone finishes the route before you, you can't I mean, not the route, but finishes like a connection between two cities, that connection's done. Like, you can't use it anymore unless it's got an extra route and you're playing with enough people. But they can block you, and that can really hurt depending what you've got built up in your hand. One of the other major differences, though, is that you're not just collecting cards in your hand. You're going to be playing them down to your palette and then building up, and then you'll play a brush card to kind of activate them, and the brush card and the color cards will all have to match to what piece of the painting you're trying to paint that's out right now, and that's how you'll score points in advance, which is not similar to Ticket to Ride. You're making sets, playing them, getting points, putting stuff out on the board. But yeah, it's the other thing, the main difference I see with it is that Bob Ross, The Art of Chill is more chill, right? We just have to put it out there. But it's a great game, a lot of fun, and it's kind of like the next step after Ticket to Ride. Not a huge step, but just the next step, because you have more options on your turn, you get more actions on your turn, and you also have to watch out for Bob, because if he finishes the painting faster than you do, then all your work of the paints that you've collected are going to go to waste unless you luck out and they're on the next painting, which doesn't always happen. So my number 3, Bob Ross, The Art of Chill. Okay, on to my number 2. My number 2 game that is similar to Ticket to Ride is Turn and Taxis. Again, with the differences, the theme is probably the closest we're going to get to Ticket to Ride. You are building routes for postal cars across somewhere in Europe. Sure, I'm not positive on what the theme is or if it's been rethemed at all. There's also 4 characters that you can choose from every turn that give you a special ability. That's really neat. It's like you get 1 extra oomph every turn that you can use, so don't forget to use those. And then the major difference from Ticket to Ride is that you can draw cards and play them on the same turn. And that's one of everyone's major complaints, like, why can't I just play this now? Why do I have to waste a whole turn playing cards? But if you do that, that's just not Ticket to Ride, right? I mean, like, it's supposed to build up, and then someone else can play that route before you and take your thing you've been building up for 6 turns and just enrage you. And that's part of the game. You can't change that, so. Similarities, though. You are building routes. Yes. You're trying to build larger routes as you go, too, so you can collect larger, the postal carriages that are larger in size. I think it goes all the way up to 7. You have limited actions every turn. Play and draw. Or draw and play, sorry. Choose a special ability and use that as well. That's it. It's a pretty simple game. And when you score, when you play houses. So instead of putting trains out on the board, you're going to be putting houses out on the board, and you'll be scoring points for that. So, Turn and Taxis is probably the most similar in theme and play style that you're going to get to Ticket to Ride. But my number 1 that's coming up, I just enjoy more, and it really, when the first time I played it, I was like, gosh, this just feels like Ticket to Ride. So let's go ahead and get to my number 1. Okay, number 1, we made it! My number 1 game that is like Ticket to Ride, when I first opened this up and played it, I was like, this is it. This is the game that everyone's going to love. But it didn't quite go that way. It's Ethnos. So, people, it's famous for having terrible artwork, right? People aren't real fond of the board and how drab it looks. But at its core, it is just Ticket to Ride with a different mechanic on the board. So on your turn, you can take a card, or you can play a set. Wow, that's like what we're doing in Ticket to Ride, right? So you're trying to accrue cards of either hobbits or merfolk or giants or dwarfs and all these different races. Like it's fantasy themed, so the theme is not there. So throw that out the window. No trains in Middle Earth or wherever this game's supposed to take place. So you're collecting sets, and then you'll play a set. Eventually, it has to be at least 2, and then you'll get points for that. And then you'll also get to take one of your little discs and put them out on the board for the area control part of the game. So that's the main difference there, is that when you are playing sets, you're not putting trains out on the board. You're choosing a spot to put one of your discs to control that area. Now, what set you play matters, because whatever card, if you're playing all one color, you have to place on that color zone. If you're playing all one race, whatever color you put on top, you have to play in that color zone. The really interesting part about this game that takes it to like the next level past Ticket to Ride, for me, is that all the different races have different abilities. Hobbits don't give you points when you score them when you play a set, because there's like a million of them in the deck. So collecting a large set of hobbits is very easy. There's also like the merfolk, which add an extra board to the game where you're trying to go up the merfolk track as well. There's like the giant track. There's a bunch of different stuff that get added in. It doesn't but you only play with 6 at a time. So it's not like you're trying to add everything in at once. You're just randomly choosing 6 races, shuffling all those cards in the deck, and then forming one large deck and just going through it. There are also 3 dragon cards. They'll signal the end of the game. So once you have one dragon card out, it's like, the game might end soon. Once you have the second dragon card out, it's like, the game could end at any draw. So you got to be careful. But when you play a set, all the other cards that are left in your hand, you don't keep. You'll actually discard them face up for everyone to choose from. So that can help extend the rounds, because then people can choose one of your cards that you just discarded instead of having to draw off the top of the deck. The other thing that happens is, like I said, there's 3 rounds in the game instead of just playing 1 round. So once the dragon comes up, the 3rd dragon card, that ends the round, and you're going to actually then look at the area control part, and you'll score points based off of who owns each area. And then the second round, you score off who owns each area and who is like second place in each area. And the 3rd round, you do it one more time, except you'll score 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place. I love Ethnos. It's a great game. It's easy to teach anyone. It's literally pick up a card, play a set, just read what the cards do. None of them are too difficult. So my number 1 pick for games that are like Ticket to Ride, if you're looking to get someone that loves Ticket to Ride into something different, and they are okay with fantasy theme or love fantasy, I highly recommend you check out Ethnos. And that's it for my top 5. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe so you can catch more of my countdown videos, reviews, and live plays. And until next time, my name's Joe, and you've been watching Down the Vent. Bye!